Well, greetings and salutations, and welcome once again to the Newsman Weekly Podcast, episode number 44. Guys, what baseball slugger wore number 44?
Ooh.
He broke Babe
Mark
Ruth's.
McGwire.
He broke Babe Ruth's records for career home runs.
Henry Aaron,
Hammer and Hank. And yes, I'm old enough. I remember watching the game the night he hit number 715.
It was on TV.
It was on TV. Al Downing threw the pitch. Hank Aaron hit it in the left field bullpen. And part of the reason I know that is he almost broke the record on opening day when the Braves started the year in Cincinnati. And I was sitting in a 7th grade social studies class, and I had a transistor radio in my back pocket, and I ran the earbuds up the back of my shirt and had them in one of my ears.
High tech.
That is clever, man.
Yeah.
And I was listening to WLW out of Cincinnati, and I think it was on opening day. He hit the record. He hit the home run that tied the record, and I kind of like made a noise like, yay! And Mrs. Stanfield, my 7th grade social studies teacher, said, Carl, please come up here. So I walked up in front of the class, and she said, give it to me. And I pulled out the radio and the headphone, and I said, there you go. And
Unbelievable.
yeah.
She was probably racist.
She was pro-class, and I was somebody that often did stupid things like that. So, hey, everybody, thanks again to all of you for joining us today. We know you have lots of choices in this media-crazy world. We're just glad you choose to spend time with us each and every week, or at least this week. So thank you for that. My thanks also to the great folks at Relax It's Just Coffee for sponsoring this show. Every day just starts better with great coffee, and our friend Paul Kimmerling and his baristas at Relax have the best in town. In fact, I'm going to have a sip right now. Talks among yourselves out there for just a moment. That's good coffee. Okay. I'm joined again today by Zach Heiser, the executive producer of this madness. Good morning, Zach. How the hell are you?
Good morning, Carl. And if your 7th grade social studies teacher's listening, I didn't. It was just a
Premature
bad joke.
Well, she was an old woman then, so I got to
okay.
suspect she's long since passed, but I'm sure the Mrs. Stanfield descendants down in New Concord, Ohio, greatly appreciate the fact that you improperly maligned their grandmother, great-grandmother,
I'm just saying a lot of people at the time didn't want a black man to break Babe Ruth's home run record. It's true.
And I really don't think she even knew.
No, she knew.
No, I don't think she even knew about Hank Aaron. She just knew that I was sitting in the back of the class and not doing
not learning. Yeah.
And that was often
and
for
that's
me.
fair.
Yeah. Well, my whole key to school was I figured stuff out pretty fast, and once I did, I got bored. So I just disrupted everybody else's education.
You are, yeah.
Put yourself one step ahead.
It's tough being a genius.
Well, not a genius, but somebody who could figure out the Magna Carta at a young age. So
Okay.
I'm
not surprised. I'm not surprised.
I'm also joined by Richland Source North County reporter Hayden Gray. Hayden is filling in for Grant Ritchie from Knox Pages. Ritchie has been the show's official videographer since we began, but I've placed him back on double secret probation. After last week, he actively played defense against my ability to do a good show. We didn't tell Richie we were taping the show early this week, but he'll figure it out when he gets here later today and realize this work's already done. So Hayden,
he's probably waiting in the line for coffee at Relax right now.
Probably. He's a good coffee boy. But Hayden, thanks for being our coffee fetcher this morning over to Relax. And thanks for filling in on such short notice and for being willing to actively participate in Richie's undoing.
Hey, it's all right. You know, he's busy still sending me messages, trying to figure out how things are going, and I'm not returning those messages. Like you said, he's on secret probation. So.
Yeah, he'll just have to figure it out later. But hey, folks, we got another great show for you today. In a few minutes, we're going to be joined by our own Adam Doc Fox to talk about potential new DNA developments in the case of Amy Mihaljevic, a 10-year-old Bay Village girl whose kidnapped body was found in an Richland County field more than 3 decades ago, and a death that remains unsolved. After that, we'll be joined by City of Mansfield Public Works Director Louis Andres. Louis is going to bring us up to speed on everything that's happening in the city's parks these days. So stay tuned for both of those discussions. But while I have your attention, stay tuned on Wednesday. Richland Source has a big announcement coming regarding Mansfield native and Iditarod racer Matthew Failer. Are you ready for another in-person evening with Mansfield's favorite dog musher? We did it a year ago. Huge crowd. We're going to do it again. So we got you covered on that, and we will announce all the details on Wednesday on how you can come and participate that evening.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for that. Before we get into all of that, let's talk about some local news. I did cover a public meeting late last week about the $19.3 million Main Street Corridor Improvement Project that's now underway in downtown Mansfield. More than 50 local business owners and residents attended the meeting in the offices of Downtown Mansfield, Inc. The biggest thing I learned is that Phase 1 of the project, which is going to take about 90 days, may be the biggest one in terms of overall impact along the entire corridor from 1st Street to 5th Street. Why? Well, that's because century-old water lines are being replaced along the entire section of Main Street in the corridor, a project that began February 24th and is going to last until the end of May. Other sections of the project will be done in stages, kind of one block at a time. That'll reduce the impact along the rest of the corridor. But this first phase needs to be done. The last thing anybody wants to do is finish the corridor project and then rip up a portion of the street due to a water main break.
Yeah.
I wrote a pretty detailed story on that meeting. Check it out at richlandsource.com. We'll also put links in the show notes with this podcast where you can sign up for text updates and emails as the 20-month-old project rolls along. 20-month-old, 20-month project. It's only about a little over a month old.
Yeah. 50 businesses and business owners and residents. That's a pretty good turnout for a public meeting, right?
For a public meeting that began at
night.
4:30 in the afternoon. I mean, that's I was pretty amazed. Hey, Richland County Commissioners hired a new apiarist for the county last week. Commissioners set aside $4,000 in the county's 2025 general fund budget for the position. And last week, with Hayden Gray in attendance, they selected Aaron Billheimer last week to fill the role. He's a Shelby beekeeper who began beekeeping nearly 6 years ago. He's also a member of the Richland Area Beekeepers Association. Hayden, tell us what county apiary inspectors do.
From a general perspective, I mean, they really travel around the county and make sure that the health and well-being of the bees that beekeepers have are healthy. They can help prevent diseases among those bees. If they need to send something off for testing, they can do so. And, I would assume while they're out and about, they're just making sure that the beekeepers around our area are practicing how they should according to whatever beekeeping rules are out there. But I know Dave Duncan, who used to be a beekeeper, who was a huge advocate for this decision to come back about. He had done it and said that one of his favorite parts of the job was honestly just visiting parts of the county that you don't frequently travel down, and it's an important thing. And I know everybody, commissioners included, were happy to get this done.
I know he told commissioners that he said even if you're not a bee lover, they still have an importance. He said 80% of the fruits and vegetables we eat are dependent on pollinators. There are other pollinators, but bees take care of the lion's share. Now, Hayden, these are not the yellow jackets and hornets that I see around my house that I dispatch with great vigor.
No. And, maybe I've got a hack for you, Carl. I think I saw something probably from the TikTok, but maybe you can, in your spare time, I see people, they create out of like yarn. They'll yarn a fake nest, and it keeps them away. They're very territorial, so they don't want to create a nest then. So maybe in your free time, you can get some knitting going.
I did see, it was on YouTube or TikTok or the Instagram, there was a video. There was a college baseball game, and they found out the game got delayed because they found a bee's nest. Oh. I assume it's hornets, the kind of things you don't like, in the top of a corner of the dugout.
Ooh.
And they literally, on this video, this tall guy comes walking in wearing coveralls and comes walking in, and he literally reaches up with his bare hand, and he pulls this nest down, and he drops it into a box, and he walks away. And the bees are taken care of. And I thought, you know what? I don't know where you find those kind of folks, but God bless them.
Yes.
The last big hornet's nest I had somebody come and spray it and kill it, because it went from like nothing to like 2 nights later, this thing is massive, and it's hanging out of my.
They work quickly.
Yes,
Oh,
they
yeah.
do.
It's hanging literally from. What kind of tree is that I have? A walnut tree. Is it a walnut tree? No, I don't
Sure,
know. Yeah,
it's a
anyway,
walnut tree.
It's a big
Sure,
tree. It's
sure.
a maple tree.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so I had it taken care of. But no, these are not those kinds of
No.
bees. These are bees we need.
Yeah. And the other thing about that story, Hayden, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but I think it's cool because Katie Ellington Sorrell put something in our Slack channel about Dave Duncan, the new, what's the word?
Well,
Apiary?
Aaron Bailheimer's the new county deputy apiarist.
Oh,
Dave
okay.
Duncan was a big advocate for
Okay,
this.
well, you talk about that then, because he
Oh,
submitted an open source question, which is you can go on richlandsource.com, ask us anything about Richland County's lack of a bee inspector, and she said what he didn't realize was he could actually go to the county commissioners and speak directly to them.
Yeah.
And next thing we know, we've got a position for it.
Sure, yeah. So real quickly, I'll just touch on that. Like you said, the open source tool was utilized. As reporters, we all get alerts when those questions come in. So yeah, Katie had a conversation with Dave Duncan, and while they were having that conversation, it kind of came about that sometimes among the public and among residents, there can be a certain idea that members of the media or reporters can have more easy access to our public officials, and regular citizens, just like all of us, have as much access to those meetings as well. So she let him know he could come out to the county commissioners meeting. We let him know what time it started, and they were happy to speak with him. And like you said, we got it done. So
That's great.
There you go. Once again, people, your voice being heard, and you made a difference. Hey, speaking of that, Mansfield City Council tonight is expected to hear Mayor Jody Perry's plan to adopt the International Property Maintenance Code. That is a set of regulations developed around the globe, hence the word international, to establish minimum standards for the maintenance of existing residential and commercial buildings. As we're going to learn from Louis Andres here in a little bit, Mansfield has used funds derived from the Pride tax for more than a decade to demolish and clean up deteriorated and dilapidated buildings. The question has often been what steps the city can take to stop structures in Mansfield from reaching the point that they need to be torn down. Adrian Ackerman, the city's community development housing director, said the code will help the city act more proactively to avoid future blight, far beyond what the current codes adopted back in the 70s will allow. The issue is scheduled for discussion, not a vote tonight. Ackerman said the plan is to follow a schedule of 3 readings for local lawmakers before a vote, unless lawmakers decide to accelerate the project. So we'll find out more about that tonight. Hey, that's enough for now. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Adam Fox to talk about a DNA update on the case of a kidnapped 10-year-old girl from Bay Village, whose body was found in an Ashland County field 35 years ago. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Newsman Weekly. We're now joined by Adam, a.k.a. Doc Fox, Digital Marketing Director for Source Brand Solutions, a columnist, a lot of rock music columns we've seen coming out of Doc, and also soccer czar and mountain climber extraordinaire. He gave me a heads up on a documentary that I went and watched late last week, where the 2 gentlemen were climbing down in South America. What was the name of that again?
Touching the Void.
That is absolutely terrifying.
Okay, so you watched it?
I did watch it. I'm sorry spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, turn off your computer for a minute. If I had been the guy that had slipped down in that crevice, I ain't going anywhere. You know what? I'm figuring out a way. This is where I'm going to die.
Yeah, and he actually climbs down further.
Right.
That's what's insane. He's like, okay, I can't climb out.
He's got a broken leg.
Yeah. He's like, I'll just go down deeper into the darkness of the crevasse.
Yeah.
So it's like 127 hours. That kind
Times
yeah.
100.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, I mean, he barely survives. His friend who climbed the mountain with him is about to book. His friend who may or may not have cut a rope as they were coming down. I don't want to get into all the details. You have to watch the documentary, but it is positively terrifying to see what those guys went through. But mountain climber extraordinaire Adam Fox with us, but he didn't come in today to talk about any of those things. Adam is also somebody who loves a good unsolved murder mystery, and he's got an update for us on the case of Amy Mihaljevic. Now, Adam, there was some news reported last week about DNA in the case of the little girl who was found in an Ashland County field 50 miles and 4 months from where she disappeared in Bay Village. I'm so old, guys. I remember being in the Mansfield News-Journal newsroom as a health reporter. They went out and found the unhealthiest guy they could find in 1990.
Beacon of health.
To name the health reporter. When the news broke, and I remember reporter Linda Martz at the time, who covered Ashland County, raced out of the newsroom to head over to Ashland County after Amy's body was found. So, Adam, we're a long ways away. Was that 35 years ago? What's news in this case?
The crux of this whole case is DNA. So we are in this wonderful world where we're actually catching up to like killers and rapists and things like that because our DNA tech continues to improve. So to give you a sense of what DNA we're actually working with, they found 3 hairs on Amy's body when she was dumped in that field, as Hunnell alluded to. It's kind of in between Nova and Ruggles Township in northern Ashland County, Township Road 1181. And they found 3 hairs on her body, or 3 hairs, one on her body, one on the sweatpants, and then one on her underwear. So the problem with this DNA on just the body is it's been degraded over time. So they've been trying to figure out, okay, they're looking at that. Then, about 300 feet or 300 yards, depending on the report, down the road, there was a blanket and a curtain found. And again, like why it took them so long to be like, you know what? I wonder if that has anything to do with this body that we found. Turns out it did. So there was hairs on the blanket and curtain. So it's a store-bought blanket and then a homemade curtain that's green and was sewn. So it came from somebody's house or whatever, where Amy was wrapped up in that, and they threw that down the road. So there's DNA on that blanket, but originally they had found the DNA to be of Amy's dog. So they're like, oh, okay, well, that's not it. And now they realize that there are other hairs and that they can actually test it. So to recap, you have 2 DNA pools. You have the stuff that was found on her actual body, and then down the road, DNA that was on this blanket and curtain. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the blanket and curtain they just found, is that the update, or they had it for a while? And
yeah, they had it for a while. They just didn't dive deep enough to start pulling DNA and stuff off it. And they think, and there was a misconception of like, oh well, they have hairs, they're the dog hairs and blah blah blah. So they're testing those 2 things, and recently, what's kind of big about this is one, the facilities and the things like that we're able to do, but the DNA. So you have hair DNA, and then you have her actual clothing. So on her actual clothing, they found male DNA that would be on her sweatpants in a spot that wouldn't normally be there.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's like on the outside of her knee, okay, she could have bumped into somebody. But if it's on the inside of the sweatpants and it's not her DNA, well, that's pretty massive. So that's the place in Florida that's looking at this like in-depth DNA on the body. And then they're looking at hairs too at the FBI crime lab, and then there's a facility in California as well and the reason they've been so hesitant to really dive in, because when DNA is degraded, you can't just test it endlessly. The actual process breaks down the actual DNA
evidence
itself. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been really waiting to be like, we don't want to test this, and it turns out, it's not Zach Heiser, our number 1 suspect, in the case. Yes. He wasn't born yet, I don't think.
Probably not.
So that's kind of the overview of where they're trying to get all of these different DNA parts, and now they're to a point where they can actually test DNA and then, in a sense, store it in the greater database for some other person, or if somebody else is already in there.
Conceivably they could have a match pop up, because that's the thing.
Yes.
You have to have a match.
Yes, exactly.
You could have the DNA in its perfect condition, whatever, but then if you can't find a match for it, what good is it, other than saying this is a male DNA, it's dog DNA, whatever?
Well, I think it's interesting that so much of this I mean, we talked about this a little bit in a previous episode when Mansfield Police Department solved a unsolved murder by the use of DNA that technology was not there at the time of the murder. I mean, this is 35 years later. I think they stored or are storing some of this DNA in the hopes that it looks like newer technology will allow this type of testing to be done.
Exactly. Because the way they were operating before was via process of elimination. So mitochondrial DNA is from the mother's side that they've found on Amy's body, right? Remember the two buckets, so we're talking about the body itself. And what that gives you is a cluster of families that allows you to see certain rungs on the DNA ladder that we've all seen. So what that is that it points to saying, like, okay, the person that we believe, that the authorities believe abducted her, if you go based on the hairs found on her, is of German heritage, is a white male, and so they can kind of piece together certain things, and then they can also piece together things that they're not, right? Like it's not this race, or it's not whatever. But that still doesn't give you the match, right? So that's the next step here is they're getting close to that point with that, it's the FBI lab that's somewhat local, and then they send to the California lab that specializes in damaged DNA to pull that and still keep the integrity for further tests. And then, like you said, I mean, imagine a match. And we can get into suspects, or I don't know how deep we want to go, but like, just imagine a match. And I know we're so many decades later, but Amy's dad is, lives with this every day. Yeah. Amy's mom could not take the grief and died from, what I believe is just straight tragedy, broken heart. So that closure, and just like, it's an obsession case. I'm interested in it, but I don't even, like James Renner, and there's some people that this is their whole life. So it'd be awesome to get closure. And if the dude's still alive, I mean, sure would be nice to, catch a rapist, child killer.
Right.
Yeah, how'd you like to be that guy? It's it's 35 years later. You're living somewhere out in Idaho up on a mountain, and suddenly there's a knock on the door and say, hey, you ever been to Bay Village?
Yep.
No. Yeah, I think you have. Let's come. Why don't you come with us? So, and I know you'd like to be there for that moment when they make that arrest. Wouldn't you?
Oh my goodness, that would be so amazing. Because I've done some local, true crime stuff, and they had canines out at this place. I won't go into too many details, but it was just like, oh, you're so close, and you want justice. Because that's why I like cold cases over true crime, because you can still solve it. You can still find it. And this dude, whoever did it was I don't want to give them credit, but for the backstory of it, Amy was called on the phone. So y'all with your fancy iPhones and your smartphones, we used to have landlines.
Wow.
And we used to have rotaries on those, and you would dial, and you didn't know who the hell was calling, which was so crazy. And you would just pick up your phone, and you would even answer with something like Fox household, Adam speaking, like madness, right? Like, how is it? Did you have instruction on how to answer the phone when you were a child?
Well, my parents didn't trust me to answer the phone, and looking back at how I was, I can't blame them. But yeah, I would call friends of mine, and they would answer it that way. Like Kenny household, this is Brad.
Right, like just stuff that you would never.
So she backing up to like how she got kidnapped. Is that? I'm not really familiar with the case, so can you just give us a little bit of an overview of what went down 35 years ago?
So we have call records from, this was she's in Bay Village. This is the west side of Cleveland, more affluent neighborhood. And so we have call logs that the same person is calling Amy when her parents are at work. So Amy comes home from school, and there's that window from about 3 to 5, which was totally normal in the 80s for you to be alone at home at 9 or 10 years old. I'm not saying good or bad. It's just different world. So she was getting phone calls, and this, sick dude with his manipulation was like, hey, did you hear your mom got a promotion at work? Like, it's a really big deal. We should get her something. And Amy's like, oh, that sounds great. And the dude's like, all right, after school, I'll meet you, and we'll go shopping for your mom, and and I work. He prefaces by saying, "I work with your mom." And so this will be a great. Everyone in the office is on board. So Amy goes to school that next day and tells everyone that she's going shopping, or tells some friends that later give the reports like, "Hey, I'm going shopping with this guy to get my mom a gift." Well, 3 other North Olmsted girls that match, brown hair, brown eyes, same age discrepancies, got similar calls leading up. And there was 3 different parents that had either called the police or said "Hey, my daughter's getting weird calls about blah blah." But again, it's the 80s. This is not, you couldn't just go on Facebook and be like, "Hey everyone, look out for this new child scam." This is check it on the news or something.
Al Gore hadn't invented the internet by then.
One of the many things he did. He actually invented the Roman Empire too.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, so she's so she tells this, and then after school she goes to this shopping center, which is I guess you could say it's somewhat ironic that it's across the street from the Bay Village Police Department. And there's this guy that her friends say that she's talking to. He kind of looks like either John Denver, old moppy hair, or millennial Justin Bieber, kind of Lego hair. Big, thick 70s glasses, blonde hair. Just kind of, if you were just to describe a pedo weirdo, you'd this would kind of be your
description. Yeah,
it'd be kind of, no offense, John Denver, but a couple of those album covers. I wouldn't let you babysit my kids. So they're seen walking away. They don't actually, nobody sees them get into a car, but they're walking to the parking lot and never seen again until 3 months later she's found in Ashland. So that's kind of the hook of how she was tricked into this, and you saw a pattern of other people. So then that's why you get the suspect lists of okay, what's the connection with the 3 other girls? What do they all do? Blah, blah.
So there has been no, has there ever been an arrest in this case? Or?
No, and they won't even, the FBI, so when I was deep diving into this, I called Bay Village Police, the lead detective. The coincidence in this whole thing is the now the Bay Village Chief of Police 5 years ago when I was investigating it, actually gave a speech at Amy's school the day she got taken about stranger danger.
Oh my gosh.
And then,
that's too weird.
It's just so I talked to Bay Village, FBI, and they won't even tell you a person of interest in the case. They are so tight-lipped about suspects, and you got to be careful. As Hunn'll know, who's edited a bunch of my stories and is like, "Gosh dang it, dude! Don't you know journalism 101? You cannot say this." And I say, "No, Carl. That's why I need you."
You can say it, but just be prepared to be sued. Yeah.
So no arrests, but there is a pretty substantial suspect list, and without naming names, I could go into some possible suspects if you want, or however you want to.
Yeah, let's not start identifying suspects. I think that would be, that thing we talked about in terms of writing. The same thing kind of applies to broadcasting. It's still some kind of journalism that will still get you hauled into court.
Well, I'm curious about how they find a match. I mean, there's a criminal database, right, with people's DNA. So, how long does that? It's okay, if someone gets arrested and their DNA swabbed in Montana, they have to connect that to some cold cases? Or are they always hey, let's check this? And is there a list of, this is dumb and I don't know how it works, but how do they, what's do you know about the process for finding matches for those cold cases like Amy's?
Yeah, and it's constantly changed. When I interviewed James Renner, who's kind of the local, expert and has written a book and blah, 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 even going back and listening to his interview before this, how much DNA in the process has changed. There's a national database now. So it is very easy once you actually pull the data to run it against this national database. The issue is that not everybody has been uploaded into that database. There's also rape kits and things that are sitting on shelves that haven't been processed yet. So, I did a cold case before where they linked a West Virginia case to a local Mansfield case because they just ran the rape kit in West Virginia a month before.
Wow.
And then they were like, whoa, this is the same person. And then they're like, wait a minute. If that's the same person, we know that person had to be one of two people up there. It's got to be, Johnny whatever.
Right. I remember the first time I ever heard of DNA being used, and I think it was actually used for the first time in England. But the first time I remember a big criminal case where DNA was used was the O.J. Simpson murder trial. And those of you who remember watching that trial, that's part of how, in addition to the gloves that didn't fit, if the gloves don't fit, you must acquit, which was the single biggest mistake made by a prosecuting attorney I've ever seen in my life. Chris Darden, I don't know what you were thinking that day, but the DNA was a huge part of that trial, and it was still fairly early in the process, and the criminologists from the LAPD just got crucified into how they handled the DNA. So, I mean, this is stuff, even though we're 30, obviously when it happened, there was really no such thing as a lot of DNA investigation, but 35 years later, they have to be careful because this isn't guaranteed stuff.
100%. You have to be so careful. Is Dawn Fryback still doing DNA tests in Mansfield?
Yes.
So she's brilliant, and I talked to her, and she was telling me about how there's this, even when you're just moving the sample, from one desk to the other desk, it's that's the only sample. You can't drop it. She's got a great story of they were testing the DNA from this hand, but the hand had, it's been years or whatever, so the skin slid off the hand, and she was trying to DNA, test this and just so yeah, you get one shot at it. That's why they've been waiting so long to do this because they don't. And as technology gets better and better, they're like, okay, we gotta wait. But we're getting to a point where this guy is going to be dead soon.
Right, if he's not already.
Right, if he's not already. So, I mean, we want to get it right, but, at some point, it's 3rd and 10, you're going to have to throw the ball down the field, even if you're the Browns and have the worst quarterbacks of all time.
That's a great analogy.
Just kidding. Super Bowl this year.
Yeah. For Cleveland? Okay, good, yeah. All right. Well, you know what, Adam, thanks for coming in today, giving us an update. Any big mountaineering or rock shows coming up people need to hear about?
I am later this week, or I don't want to be too exact with the dates so my house doesn't get robbed. But we're heading to Mount St. Helens to attempt to climb Mount St. Helens and then snowboard and ski down it, which is really cool. And we have all our avalanche stuff, beacons and shovels and probes and just to give you just a 20-second thing. So when the avalanche comes down, I talked about this in my cold camp thing. You're completely buried and you can't move. There's this idea that you can dig yourself out, or it becomes like concrete. So your probe your beacon is the only thing, and so your other climb teams, we switch over to search, and then it's just kind of like metal detecting. It's like beep 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 beep, and it just kind of gets you warmer and warmer and warmer. And then you get up to that person, and you pull out this giant 20-foot probe that's, solid steel, and you just start shoving it down into the ice until you hit a body, which sucks for them, but,
they're just happy to be found.
They're happy to be found. And then you have these super lightweight but super durable, titanium shovels, and you just dig, and then hopefully they haven't suffocated yet, and you dig them out. So we've been monitoring avalanche levels all the past 3 months. We're in low to moderate right now, which I know to some people sound like moderate. How are you? Moderate seems like something. If there's a moderate amount of sharks, would you go swimming? But anyway, so I'm super excited to get to Washington. So gorgeous out there to do another Cascade Peak. I climbed Rainier a couple years ago without a guide. So I'm taking, my son and this guy, Todd Briggs, who's flying over from Spain. So it's class 1 to 2. Nobody's going to die, knock on wood.
It's not going to erupt.
It's not.
I was going to say, you're talking about avalanche, but do you have an eruption scale? Because that's what I remember most about Mount St. Helens is the day it blew up.
Right. So the crater, it still smokes occasionally. I just think that if it does erupt, it's just going to make for such better, content.
A better obit for you.
Well, yeah. I just feel like I can ride lava,
Uh-huh.
down.
Right.
Yeah, I had never seen a volcano that large, I guess, that literally imploded and took a third of a mountain away with it. I mean, it's wildly impressive what happened on Mount St. Helens that day.
Yeah, all of the climbing obviously changed from it. So our approach now is going to be from the south, heading north into it. And it's a weird thing because if you look at Mount St. Helens from the south, it looks like a normal cone, but the back side of it has been completely blown off. And you've seen the pictures, and I was a little too young for that, but it was such, it's technology and the times. All of a sudden, it's like, wait, Mount St. Helens is erupting, and people are in the path, and they still have the lava flow out, and I mean, you can climb on the debris still.
Wow.
It's nuts.
What about assuming, and knock on wood, you survive Mount St. Helens with your son, and even if you don't survive, I hope he does. What about rock shows coming up this year? I know you just wrote about a fairly significant show coming up in Columbus.
Oh yeah, rock and roll. I was thinking you were talking about rock climbing. Yeah, Sonic Temple is coming to Columbus with Metallica, Alice in Chains, Rob Zombie. Ministry, Gwar. There's a sweet Gwar interview Richland Source did. You should check that out.
Now, does that guy wear the makeup during interviews?
Well, actually, it's not makeup. He's an alien from a distant planet.
Okay.
But
It's
if
just
you
some
Skin,
Carl.
Carl.
I'm sorry. Last hard rock band I listened to was probably AC/DC, so it's been a while.
well, no, that was.
By the
cool.
way, they're on tour again.
Oh, God.
If you want to go watch a 70-something Angus Young who doesn't look quite as good in the schoolboy outfit as he used
You
to.
can still play the guitar.
Yes, he can. The same 3 notes, but that's okay.
Yeah, it was like when I saw Judas Priest, it was like, all right, it might be time to call it. But yeah, Sonic Temple, it's pretty amazing that we get one of the biggest and best rock and roll festivals right in our backyard in Columbus. And then, like, I don't want to say literally in our backyard, but figuratively, literally in our backyard is Incarceration this summer, which is a ginormous festival. And then we have Newsroom After Hours, the local thing we do here for Mansfield. So, it's, I don't know, I toot my own horn here, and I work for Source Media and blah, blah, but there is a great effort to provide all kinds of different types of music coverage. Hip-hop, like new album releases, and Mansfield Music Fest, and the local stuff, and the giant stuff. So I
We are
think
living
we do
in the
great.
golden era of live music.
Well, can we go ahead and
Sorry,
start
Hunnell.
the rumor that Metallica is going to play at Newsroom After Hours, or is that something we can't announce at
Is that
this
in our
point?
budget, Zach?
Yeah.
Yeah, they big time me. I tried to, try to reach out for interviews for everyone, and Metallica.
Hatfield was kind of busy that day and didn't.
Yeah, they don't really do interviews for festivals.
Sorry.
He's too busy making Instagram videos where he sits backstage smoking cigars before the show begins. I mean, that's where I see them most often these days.
You will be seeing them at Sonic Temple, though, and I'm going to go with you
Oh,
on Friday night.
Yeah, they're playing 2 nights, Friday and Sunday. So
2 unique sets, it says.
exactly, no repeats. The lineup, if you're into any metal, and it's not even, there's so many genres within metal, like, and then there's some, rock and emo and stuff too.
Jimmy Eat World.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Eat
So
World's
wait.
playing Saturday.
if I go see Metallica one night out of those 2, I might not get to hear
Right.
the Metallica song I really want to hear.
It's great marketing.
Is it one? Is that what you're talking? What's your Metallica song? Sing it. We'll be able to.
No, I don't-
Fade to
don't
Black. Nothing else matters.
And Enter Sandman.
Yeah,
That's the one. That's the one.
I do
So
wonder if they're going to do, like, if they're going to split up the hits for both of them, or
I'm
if
sorry. If I go pay money to go see Metallica and I don't hear Enter Sandman, I'm going to have an issue.
Well, they want to keep you there all weekend long.
I
Yeah,
mean,
you're gonna
I
have to
get it
stay.
to a certain extent back in the days of the Grateful Dead. I mean, because they only play like 6 songs in a concert, so you never know for sure. But there's no guarantee you're going to, because like I said, 6 songs takes 2 hours, so there's no. But I mean, Metallica, they have to. I'd be disappointed if I went and didn't hear Sandman.
I feel you on that. I think the true Metallica people would not feel your pain, so to speak.
That's okay.
But the aside real quick on the Grateful Dead. So picture, it's like, it's acid doesn't even exist yet, right? So you got Ken Kesey, and they're out there and they're throwing acid parties where they fill up a giant thing of a trash can full of Kool-Aid and they put acid in it. And the Grateful Dead, which no one had ever heard before, is playing at these parties, and people who had never experienced psychedelics before are just like losing their minds and listening to the Grateful Dead. And that was like the scene of that explosion that went in. Like, if you like the Beatles, you can thank the Grateful Dead. Because Sgt. Pepper and all of that was directly influenced by the Beatles being like, wait a minute, what's the sound? And what is this? Lysergic acid diethylamide? What is this?
One of the greatest inventions of our time.
It was so weird. It's been a few years ago now, but I went out to Colorado to Red Rocks and saw Jimmy Buffett play out there.
Rest in peace.
The late, great Jimmy Buffett. And they did like 27 songs in an hour and a half. And then I came back home, and 2 nights later, I went down to Cincinnati to go see Dead and Company at Riverbend with my oldest son. And they played for 2 hours, and they played like 6 songs.
Right.
I mean, it was such a weird dichotomy for an old guy. I'm like, I enjoyed them both. It's just two radically different musical experiences. All right, guys, we're going to end it there. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll be joined by Mansfield Public Works Director Louis Andres, who's going to bring us up to date with everything that's happening in Mansfield City Parks. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Newsman Weekly Podcast. Joining us as promised now is City of Mansfield Public Works Director Louis Andres. Good morning, Louis. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for coming in so damn early.
Well, thank you, Carl. Thanks for having me back.
It is great to have you back. I don't know how many people remember, but Louis was our first ever Newsman Weekly guest way back on June 25th of 2024.
Yes.
So, and still one of the best received episodes we've done. In fact, it may be number one. I'll have to go back and check the numbers, but a lot of pressure on you now.
Yes.
To perform and bring in another big audience. Much has changed since then, obviously, both in the city and on this podcast. So let's dive right in. In case some of you don't know, and if you don't know by now, you should, Louis is an outdoorsman by nature, a naturalist who worked in the Parks and Rec field for more than 40 years. Began his career in 1978 with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources as a park naturalist. 91, became park manager at Malabar Farm State Park, remained in that position for almost 22 years. Retired for the first time in July 2012 as the North Central District Manager for Ohio State Parks after, 32 years of public service. Not satisfied to stay retired, he began part-time work in 2013 for the Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District at Charles Mill and Pleasant Hill Lake Parks.
So he's the Michael Jordan of parks.
He is.
Jordan of parks.
The difference
without
is,
the gambling scandals.
Yeah, no gambling scandals, and also when he comes back out of retirement, he also succeeds. So when Jody Perry was elected mayor, one of her first calls was to Louis because she knew the city's park system needed to be improved, and he was the person to lead that effort. So Louis, let's start with this. Why are public parks so important to people? I try to avoid social media, but every time I do look, public parks in Mansfield are something people love to talk about, complain about. Even when things are getting better, they'll find ways to complain. So why is it in your mind that parks are so important to people?
It gives a people, if you're in a city or urban environment, it gives you a release. And studies have shown that if you're in nature and the color green actually has a calming effect. So even for mental health, if you go, color is very important. Blues and greens, natural colors, are a calming effect. All of our parks are free. I mean, no matter what your demographic or whatever your income level is, you can come and enjoy our parks free of charge. Okay.
Now, Mansfield, I think, still has, is it 21 or 22 city parks?
We have
right
22 city parks.
22 city parks. All right, since we spoke last year, and to be honest, when I had you on the show last year, you'd only been on the job for a few months, and a awful lot of what we talked about was what the plans were in terms of what you had coming up. But so give us the biggest highlights on what changes people have seen in the city's park and recreation areas in the last almost a year since you were here.
Yeah, our major goal the first year was to go in and assess what types of things we could do very quickly and do some first impression items. And a lot of that was just painting stuff, repairing stuff. We put new gutters, roofs, painted things, repaired the restrooms, got those open, got rid of rotten trees. I mean, just general cleaning up. And so when you come into the park, it looks like it's being taken care of. So this winter and all last summer, we started doing those types of things. So when you go into the parks, if you were there over a year ago, you'll see nice roofs on things, gutters. You'll see parking lots that's paved, roads that are paved, restrooms that are updated and cleaned up and stuff like that. So a lot of it is the first impression items when people come into the parks.
Now, I know one of the things I often still hear about today, but now it's more of in a positive note. One of the biggest, I guess, facelifts at a city park has been at Liberty Park off of Gray Street. Lots of changes at Liberty Park. And I know that's not been something that was strictly public funded. There was a lot of private effort involved in that. So explain to folks what you've done with the private assistance there at Liberty Park.
Yeah, the city of Mansfield has some resources, but we don't have infinite number of resources. So I feel very strongly that we need to partner with the community, and they have buy-in in, and that also leverages our money because we only have a few dollars. We have dollar budget. So in order to stretch that budget, if we can leverage that for private individuals or foundations or whatever, that stretches our money. We can get more done. Liberty happened to show a couple opportunities there. First was Coca-Cola Consolidated and Body Armor said we would like to give you $50,000 and put in a new basketball court. Rewild Liberty said they wanted to do some plantings there, and we had the church that came in and put a new bridge in, and we had the VFW step up and put a new flagpole there, and then the skate park there.
That's the DIY skate
the
park.
DIY. They've started, and they just needed some kind of boost. So when we met with them this year, I committed $10,000 for the next 3 years to help them get started. But the reason why I did that is they took the initiative and they were doing things on their own. So if we can help them do a better job and get things moved quickly, then I think that's what the city should be doing. The others, we're working with Madison schools to get the baseball field up and running. I think tonight is their first game that they have there.
I don't know how many people in Mansfield under the age of, 60, realize how historic Liberty Park's baseball field is. I mean, it was the first park in Mansfield that had legitimate night baseball lights that sat up high enough that you could play at night. Wow. There were semi-professional baseball games played at Liberty Park. I believe Satchel Paige.
No.
Yes. I believe Satchel Paige and the Monarchs came and played an exhibition game at Liberty Park. It is a very historic baseball facility.
Yeah, we want to build upon that history as well. So one of the things that we're doing is we're redoing the bathhouse there. That was a WPA project in 1937. And what's really unique is that they mined that pink sandstone just across the street there on 5th. And you'll see that in a lot of our parks and some of the city stuff of this beautiful pink sandstone that you won't find anyplace else. So we had some restoration group come out and redo the bridge there and redid the bathhouse. And then we had some money from the Richland County Foundation and the Millard Foundation that we're going to redo that bathhouse into a pavilion so people can use it. So it won't be used as a bathhouse, but it'll have restrooms in it, have an open space, and be a really nice area for people to have birthday parties, retirements, or the parks having activities during the summer as well. So that was one of our first ones, and that went very well. One of the things I know for success, if I drive through the park and there are people using it. And I remember when I first drove through, you didn't see anybody at Liberty. I drive by sometimes on a Saturday night, and there's 50 people playing basketball there. You never saw that before. So that means that we're doing the right thing if we have people now that are in there using the facilities. And that's what they're for. Parks are for people.
And I know one of the another big improvement out there was, and I thought of it when you mentioned sandstone, is the old bridge. Not the wooden one that the church did, but a complete redo of the sandstone bridge. I believe it's off the entrance off of Gray Street.
It is, yes.
What was involved with that?
Well, that's the original bridge from 1937. So they had to point everything, chip out all the old concrete, redo it and everything. We had to lower the pond down a little bit so we can get on the foundation part. But the company that we used did an excellent job. They did all of our at Brinkerhoff there. They did those pillars and also the entrances to Middle Park and also North Lake Park. All that sandstone, that was all restored by this company.
Now, what's the plan? Obviously, Liberty's not had a pavilion since they tore down the old one a few years ago, which was in really bad shape. But what's the plan when you get the new pavilion open in terms of what had been a swimming pool? Is there any plan yet in terms of filling that in or doing something different with that, or is it just going to stay the way it is?
We're looking at different options. We engaged with a consultant out of Columbus that did most of our work for long-term planning and stuff. And actually, we have a meeting next week to talk about the pool. One of the areas that we need to find a place to put that, and we need a minimum of about 10 acres. So that really limits where we can put that at, okay? Even at Liberty, we don't have the space to put in the new facilities that we'd like to put in there. So what we're doing now is getting the consultant to give us some ideas, and then we're looking at opportunities where we could find a location where we could put this at.
How many acres is Liberty, just to get an idea of, or like North Lake, or I'm just trying to figure out how big 10 acres is.
10 acres is 10 football fields.
Okay.
Okay. An acre is just shy of the end zones of a football field.
Okay.
Liberty, there's probably about 2-3 acres right there.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things is you just don't build a swimming pool, you do an aquatic complex.
Right.
And then you also have the amenities with the parking and all that. So that's the reason why the footprint needs to be so large. But also, too, all the new regulations that's required for city or public pools is just phenomenal. And that's the reason why we couldn't rush into something, because the timeline just wouldn't allow us to comply and do everything we needed to do before we opened it up. So instead of rushing in and redo the one at Liberty, we thought, well, if we're going to do it, let's do it right. Let's take our time. Let's put it in a location that we think would benefit. And I've talked to other municipalities. Pools are not a moneymaker.
Right.
They're more of an amenity, and they're very high cost because they operate. And then also you have to have very high-end labor costs because you have to have lifeguards. And the way that pool was, we had to have a minimum of 4 lifeguards there. And there's just a shortage of lifeguards. The Y and all these different places are having difficulty finding lifeguards. So that's something we need to look at. If we got to design something, it's got to meet the new standards, but also not be so heavily involved in labor, particularly lifeguards.
So there is a pool kind of on some sort of a track, whether it be slower or faster than people would want, but it's likely not going to be there at Liberty Park, at least as far as you know at this point.
At this point, it doesn't look like it because we don't have the space there. Now, what we're going to do with that area there, we're looking about reclaiming it into a natural area and probably put in something that would complement what the pool was there, along with the new pavilion that we're going to be doing. So we're working with Dan Sterkel, and he's coming up with a plan. So hopefully within the next month or so, we'll have his recommendations, and then we'll look at getting it out for bid and hopefully have a location and stuff by that time.
Yeah, Dan Sterkel, who keeps trying to retire, and every time he tries to retire, somebody pulls him back in.
Yeah, well, he's good at that restoration and preservation of old stuff. Yep. So we wanted somebody that would take that historical significance of that bathhouse and preserve that, but yet make it more modern, bring it up to the amenities that we need there at the park.
Now, one of the biggest, just in terms of acreage, biggest parks in the city other than Liberty is up at Hamilton, but it's not centrally located, obviously. But what are some of the ideas you guys have for Hamilton Park these days?
Well, we've been approached by several different groups, soccer groups and the skate park and things like that. And so we're looking at possibly seeing what we could do there with Hamilton. So it's a nice big flat area, so it lends itself to soccer fields or to other athletic type field type things. So we're still in dialogue with them to figure out what would be the best use of that property. So we definitely would like to see it as a park again and open it up as green space.
Now, one of the biggest transformations in terms of parks in the last year or so has been at the Sterkel Community Park for All. It's a 20-acre, all-inclusive park and playground located off Hillcrest Street. As far as I know right now, that's still the only entrance is off of Hillcrest Street. But I know people are already using the park. Hayden was down there a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
But I think there's an official ribbon-cutting ceremony coming up. Tell us about that, and then I'm going to ask Hayden to explain his afternoon in the park.
Can't wait for that.
We're looking at a planned schedule date for our rededication on May 23rd, which is a Friday just before Memorial Weekend, from 11 to 1. And we hope to have everything. I mean, we're kind of pushing our contractors and stuff, saying, hey, we need to have this done. So we figured if we had a date that would motivate everybody as a deadline. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have everything ready. We're expanding the parking lot. It has pickleball courts. It has an outdoor gym with weightlifting and all these different stuff. It has a playground for all ages. And what's really unique about this facility is it's accessible to everybody. So if you have a child that's in a wheelchair or somebody that has disabilities or whatever, the playground equipment is designed to accommodate them. And that was one of the big differences of all the other parks that we have is this one is designed just for that. So the other thing we're added there that was just kind of a last-minute thing was the dog park. So we're going to be in the far corner. We're going to put in a dog park in there as well. So it's going to have a lot of different things going on for it. And we know in talking with the different groups that we'll probably have people coming from outside the city because of its accessibility for all. Because I guess there's not a lot of parks that you can take children or adults with disabilities and be able to recreate like that. So we're definitely going to bring people in from the larger cities to come in and visit and use our facilities there.
And again, this was a park that if the city had to do it on its own in terms of public money would never have happened. This came about, if I remember, it's been a few years now, Richland New Hope came in with the idea. There was Michelle Geese from Richland New Hope came to city council, and they got Chris Harris involved in terms of fundraising. Got some funding from the county, got some funding from the city, a lot of private donations to help make this happen. So again, in this case, it's an example of private-public cooperation that made this new park possible.
Absolutely. Michelle and Chris and all the different foundations, the Richland Foundation and all these, saw the need, and by each one of those partnering, they were able to get to part of the goals. So we didn't raise all the money, but we said we need to do what we can do and get it open so people can enjoy it now. So there's a perfect example where the city on its own would not be able to do that. By leveraging our money and the county and all the different things in the community, we're going to have a really exceptional park.
Now, speaking of that, Hayden, you and your wife took your young son out there a couple of weeks ago. Had you seen it before, and what did you experience out at Sterkel Park for All?
Well, I hadn't seen it before. Obviously, working here, I knew what was coming and had been following along with the project. But yeah, I mean, I was blown away. Our son's about a year and a half. It was really the first park he's been to, and I think he spent probably the first 5 minutes just trying to wander around and take it all in. But I found myself, I think I told my wife, I'm like, well, I want to go play on this. And but like you said, I mean, the material is just phenomenal on these playgrounds, and you can see how it is very easily accessible and something that for everybody, as we said, can play on. But yeah, I mean, I walked around the whole thing, and you honestly just feel a sense of pride looking at this, saying our city has this. It was absolutely packed the day that we went, but you didn't feel crowded, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I've been a couple times. I echo all that. It's kind of like, oh wow, this is in Mansfield. Like it's pretty cool. Yeah. And the pickleball courts are great, and the little turf area where you can kind of play soccer with the younger kids is awesome too. I mean, and the outdoor the the exercise equipment is something that I've never even seen before. So really unique.
Very good. So there you have it, folks. 2 thumbs up
Yeah.
from Hayden and Zach in terms of a Sterkel Community Park for all. So stay tuned. We'll cover that ribbon cutting. But in the meantime, if you'd like to get out and take a look at it, what are the hours of operation out there right now?
We're open during daylight hours only. So as we move to time zone and as things get later, we'll probably be open from like 7 a.m. to probably 9 p.m. or so when we get into the peak season or whatever.
Very good. Let's switch gears, move over to Middle Park. I was driving on West 4th Street last week, and I saw, because like most things, there's traffic delays, I saw tons of concrete being poured last week near the entrance to the park along West 4th Street. What's going on with Middle Park, and what can people expect to see there this summer?
Middle Park is going to be part of what we call the Parkview Trail, which is going to be a connector trail with the B&O from North Lake Park all the way to Maple Park. And that's a little over a mile or so there. So in order for us to be compliant with crosswalks and make them safe, because we're going to have kids and families crossing Park Avenue and 4th Street, we had to put in new curbing. We're going to put in new crosswalks, and I'll just make it very safe and make it easier and accessible for people to hike and bike on this particular part of the trail. Middle Park is, I think, one of our most unique and beautiful areas because, it has some really nice water features there, waterfalls, has nice stone and things like that. So we're going to be making a road, a pedestrian walkway to connect those because that was washed away before. But then also we're going to put in a pedestrian walkway going over to the shelter house there as well because there's a nice shelter house there and there's some more green space there. We've partnered with the Ohio Realtors Association and Brightspeed to bring in an 18-hole championship disc golf course.
Okay.
Wow.
And that's going to be very unique. And with this one and with some of the other ones in the county, we think we would be right for tournaments or regional tournaments and stuff and go to each one. So we hope to start. We've just cleared out a bunch of brush and opened that up area. So we'll start putting in the disc golf holes and then the signage and stuff like that. We're also going to add a little parking area there so you could park there and access the golf course, but also the shelter house as well. And then we'll also be putting some benches and signage to tell you mileage and what's going on, all those parks that are linked together.
Now, will you be able to drive into Middle Park, or is that something due to the bridge that's going to be up by Park Avenue that you'll still just be able to walk or bike into?
You'll be able to drive into a portion of it where we have a parking lot where the shelter house is going to be at.
Okay.
So, but it will still be blocked off. The other section will be only for bicycles and pedestrian traffic only.
Yeah, I remember it's been a few years ago now, but somebody had asked us through open source, what's the status at Middle Park? So I went out there one day and parked my car, probably illegally, because at that time there was not a lot of places to park, and I could have parked at North Lake, but I'm old, and that's a really long walk to me from there. So I just kind of hiked in, and it is very beautiful. It was very quiet, which I enjoyed. But it was a little unnerving because you're in there all by yourself. What is that creek that runs through there? Do you know off the top of your head what that creek is?
Not.
But there was like a lot of trash and stuff tossed down in that creek.
Yep.
There was no good way to get over to that pavilion.
Mm-hmm.
I took some pictures of that, which means I did cross it, but I thought, well, I'm old. If this thing breaks and I die, my wife can retire early. But apparently that's all going to be fixed up. But, there's been so many questions over the years about Middle Park. So I'm glad to see that you guys are doing some really cool things out there.
We have a cleanup we have a cleanup day that's coming up in May to get all that cleaned up, and we're going to work with city forces as well as volunteers to get that cleaned up. And one of the things I noticed, I would just go out to the parks and just sit and see how people use it. I was blown away the number of school kids that use that to go getting back and forth to home. Right. So he said, well, if anything, we can improve the crosswalks and we can improve the accessibility so the kids can get there safely back and forth through Middle Park. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing that as well, is for safety for the kids going back and forth to school there.
So when this is all done, you could walk or bike from North Lake Park all the way to Maple Park? Is that
Yes.
Maple Lake Park?
Yes.
Is that kind of the idea? So that would include Middle Park and South Park?
Correct. Yes.
All right. Very cool. Now, when you took the job, Louis, one of the things you talked to me about was, I mean, keeping in mind this is a city for those who have short-term memory loss like I do. This was a city that went 5 years with no parks department whatsoever. It was in fiscal emergency, and one of the things the state did when it came in is say, you got to focus on things that are vital to the city. And sadly, at least from the state standpoint, one of those things was not parks. So there were 5 years where there was no funding whatsoever going into the city parks. The Pride tax, which we'll talk a little bit about here in a minute, helped out, obviously, when voters approved that. But one of the things you told me about was there was low-hanging fruit, things the city could do to make immediate kind of lower-cost improvements. Have you done all of those things? Is there any really low-hanging fruit left on the vine?
Yes, there's more fruit. We haven't picked all the fruit from the trees or whatever. Like I said, a lot of them are first impression items. Get the signage up. I think it's very important that when you come into city parks, you know that you're coming into a city park. I think you need to have facilities that are clean. And I think you need to have restrooms, you need to have drinking fountains, you need to have safe places to park. So, we're restriping basketball courts. We're putting in playgrounds. We're replacing the impact zones underneath the playgrounds with soft foam in the case of Sterkel, but also pea gravel and also mulch and other ones too. And also look at some of those things that we can do, like replace roofs and painting. And all those little things kind of give you a sense that it's being taken care of. And that's what we're trying to get across that first year, is that we care. Here are some of the things we're making incremental improvements. We're trying to do a little bit in each one of the parks. We could go at one park and do all that, but then how we get to the other one. So I'm just doing a little bit in each one of the parks so each community feels that they're getting some benefits from the city parks.
Now, when people think about parks and recreation areas that are operated by the city, I don't think they always think about the Clearfork Reservoir. Obviously it's not a park, but it is owned and operated by the city of Mansfield. I think there are lots of things going on out there. So explain what's happening at the Clearfork Reservoir area these days.
Clearfork Reservoir is kind of unique because it is a city property and it is our drinking water supply. So it's very critical from that point of it. Half of our drinking water comes from the Clearfork Reservoir, and the other half comes from wells that we have that we use. So a lot of times we mix those resources, like the surface water from the lake along with the well water. So one of the things that we have done there is just like with the regular parks, is just getting things cleaned up. You'll see that we've improved some of the trail areas. We've replaced quite a few of the items in like the picnic areas and things. You'll be seeing some new picnic tables. We opened up some shoreline for shoreline fishing, mowing down the multi-floor rows and trimming up the trees.
Multi-floor rows. It was the bane of Louis Bromfield's existence.
Yeah, I think he got blamed for a lot of
He
that.
did.
But also, too, our campground, our marina, we resurfaced that, restriped it. The restrooms we completely redone. The bathhouse and shower house and the campground we completely redone. So it's what you consider more traditional parks. So it has camping, fishing, boating, hiking, all those things. So Scott Cotterman and his staff there have done a wonderful job. There's a small staff there to do a lot of things there. And they were busy all winter getting things all repaired and painted and everything. We just hired an additional ranger, so now we have more enforcement and more people there to look after the people that are there as well. We have a great relationship with the marina there. So there's a lot of things that if you want to have an experience on the water, because we have sailboats, kayaks, motorboats, bass fishing. We have a lot of your traditional things you think of a park's not as a city park.
I know I've got friends of mine that still, and I don't know whether they still do, it's been a while since I asked them, but they used to talk about muskie fishing at the Clearfork Reservoir. That was a hotbed if you were going after muskie, and those are big fish.
Those are big fish, and they got sharp teeth.
Yeah,
you got to have a steel leader on your fishing line, otherwise they'll just snap it right in half.
In fact, the one friend has a muskie mounted on his wall, and you can still see the stitches on his arm because when it came into the boat that day, it took a little chunk out. So those are big fish. All right. So let's talk about what's upcoming, some things this year. I know You've got some news about the B&O Bike Trail. We'll talk briefly about the Pride tax levy coming up on May 6th, which is a renewal. It's not new money. It's a renewal of something that voters approved a long time ago. And we'll also talk to explain to us a little bit about America 250 and what you've got coming up there.
The B&O Trail, we've partnered with the Richland County Park District, and they have a map that was kind of outdated. It was done when the trail first opened up, so that's been a while. I think it was 2018 was when that opened up. So I approached them and said, hey, we would use city forces and everything to redo that map for you. We can get some donations to cover all that. So we were able to get the Richland County Park District as well as Destination Mansfield
and for
and
those
Bright
of you
Speed.
Watching, here's the actual brochure for those watching, assuming Hayden has the video working.
And Richland
We'll never
Public
know
Health
for sure.
to cover the cost of the design and reprinting and everything. So we wanted to add those new features that are coming, that are done, like the tunnel and the connector trails and the Mansfield City Parks and all that. So one of the things I wanted to do was try to incorporate all the things that have happened and are going to happen within the next year and everything. So if you got the map, you would understand where the facilities are, where you can park, the mileage, some of the history of the area and things of that nature. So we were able to partner with everybody and get that done, and the map was just delivered last week Friday.
Hey, we're breaking news here,
We're
guys.
breaking news
There
here.
you go.
So these will be available at the Park District office as well as our park offices as well as Destination Mansfield, wherever we have brochures and things. But if you get a chance, pick this up, and it has a lot of good information in there. Even if you're not going to ride a bike, but there's just good information on what facilities are available at all the parks. So it's really a nice brochure.
Excellent. Now, what about America 250? I know when it comes to historical things, that's in addition to the outdoors, history is awfully big in your heart. So tell us about America 250.
Well, America 250 is going to be the celebration of America's 250th birthday, and that will be in 2026. Richland County and City of Mansfield are official members of the 250 Club, I guess it is.
Mm-hmm.
And as we use those resources and things, so some of the things that we're going to highlight here in Mansfield, of course, Johnny Appleseed owned the first plot of land in downtown and was very instrumental in doing a lot of getting the farmers and the trees and things of that nature. South Park has a pioneer village that's been recreated. It has a pioneer cabin there. We have the blacksmith shop there, as well as part of the original blockhouse that was in Central Park was there. And so we've partnered with Reach, which is operating those things, and we're going to be putting in I guess it's called a homestead colonial garden there.
Okay.
And we're going to be doing different activities surrounded about that time period and talk about the history of Mansfield. Mansfield was pretty up. I mean, it's pretty important part of that initial Ohio becoming a state and stuff. I mean, we had a lot of industry here. A lot of the railroads came through here and terminated here. I mean, the first electric trolley in the country was
Right,
here.
it was.
So there's a lot of history here that people don't realize. So what we're going to do is reinvestigate that history and let people know why Mansfield and how Mansfield became so important in that early part of our statehood and early part of America being developed and expanding to the Northwest Territory here.
Well, excellent. So stay tuned for that. Now, finally, I got Mayor Jody Perry and Safety Services Director Keith Porch coming into the show in a couple of weeks to talk about the Safety Forces tax and the Pride tax, both of which are renewals. It'll be on the May 6th ballot. But from your standpoint, a big part of the Pride tax levy goes to the parks. So how important is that money, that levy, to what you're able to do in the city parks?
It's critical because it's 100% of our funding. So if this levy did not get renewed, we would lose all of the momentum that we've had and all the resources we had to get where we're at. So this is very critical, not only for parks but also for public safety forces and all those different things that Pride tax helps. So if you want to invest into the future of Mansfield, these green spaces are very important. When people come through the city of Mansfield, and I know when I first came here with my kids, the first thing my wife was looking for was a playground. to take the kids and stuff. So green spaces and park areas and playgrounds are very important, and this allows us to continue with that and keep building on what we started when the pride tax was first passed.
I mean, yeah, the pride tax came at a time in the city when they needed money for demolition, because obviously the land bank was starting up and we needed to put money into demolishing old buildings that were never going to be usable again. I don't know if a lot of people know that the word I, or the letter I, means illumination, because there was a time in the city when we really technically and honestly couldn't afford to keep streetlights on. So the pride tax helped cover that as well. And I think it's important for folks to know this is not new money. It's not going to cost you any more. I think it generates over $800,000 a year. I think somewhere along those lines, or over $700,000 a year just for parks.
It's $1.2 million.
Okay, so it's, apparently it's gone up.
Yeah.
I know it's a 0.25% income tax. So yeah, $1.2 million going toward the city parks. So if you believe parks are important, you're not going to have to pay any more. Just keep going with what we've got going, and vote for the pride tax renewal on May 6th. Well, very good, Louis. What happened? I asked you about today that you wanted to get out in terms of messaging.
Oh, God. We covered so much.
That's kind of what we do here on the Newsman.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to know a comprehensive what we have been doing in the parks in particular, if you go to the Mansfield's website and you go on to Parks and Recreation and go to future improvements, there's a whole list by park what we're doing in each park, what we have completed and what we plan to do as well. So if you had any idea what we're going to be doing in a park near you soon, that will be listed on there. And we're traveling to different communities like the neighborhood watch groups. We're going to those and getting their feedback. They've been very helpful because we talk about passionate people about their neighborhoods. It's those folks, and they give us some good ideas and things that we can look at and possibly get those things done. I know when I first came here, there was a lot of people that gave me these ideas that we should do, and we've implemented most of those. And a lot of times it's just simple, like, can you get with more picnic tables? Can you clean the restrooms? Those type of things. So once we get those information, we jump right on and try to get them completed.
Did we talk about the Brightspeed?
You
Internet
mentioned it
hotspots?
briefly. Yeah, go ahead.
Brightspeed came into our community, and they wanted to reach out and say, what can we do to help the city of Mansfield and the parks and everything? So one of the things that they're helping us with is getting Wi-Fi and also internet to all of our parks, especially in those parks that we have a lot of events. So like South Park, we have vendors for the food truck. They can't use their cards and credit cards because there's no Wi-Fi there. Or you're down at Middle Park or whatever, and you can't get a Wi-Fi signal or something. You need to get help, or you need to get a map or something like that. So Brightspeed has partnered with us to help us get our infrastructure in. They helped us at Sterkel Park. They helped us at Liberty Park, North Lake, and South Park are the ones that we're targeting in this first initial. And that is just about completed. I think it'll be completed by the end of this month. And so you'll be able to get onto your phones easier that way. But also, too, they're helping us sponsor some of our different organizations. They're helping us sponsor for the disc golf course. They're going to help us by matching up to $10,000 there. They help with the printing of this brochure. And they're also going to be at special events handing out free things to the kids and the public there as well. So this is a 2-year commitment that we're working with them, and they've been wonderful partners to work with. I mean, we would not be able to get the infrastructure in, like the internet and stuff, if we did not have their generous donation and cooperation for the sponsorship.
So we could go do a remote podcast at a park this summer with
we'll
Wi-Fi
just sit
hotspots.
sit out of the pavilion at Middle Park. And we'll do it out there, and we'll test the Wi-Fi.
I think we should.
I think we should do Sterkel Park first.
Sterkel
Yeah,
Park,
yeah.
without a doubt.
Yeah, because there's going to be a lot of activity going on there.
Yeah,
and,
but they'll all make a lot of noise, and I need quiet in the background.
Well, Middle Park would be the quiet place to go,
yes,
for sure.
The older I get, the more I appreciate quiet.
Just some birds chirping.
Yeah. All right. Well, folks, we're going to wrap up today's show on that note. Many thanks once again to previous guest and now latest guest, City of Mansfield Public Works Director Louis Andrus, for joining us today. Thanks again, sir, for coming in.
Thank you, Carl. It's been a pleasure. Anytime.
And our guest next week will be Bob Ball, the chief investigator for the Richland County Coroner's Office. And Bob wanted to come in and talk a little bit about something not quite as cheery. We're going to talk about suicide and maybe some ways we can reduce that and comfort those who suffer through that in terms of their own families and friends. Thanks again to all of you for listening to the Newsman Weekly podcast. I'll be back in a second to put a bow on this week's episode, but until then, remember what Mark Twain said. If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything.